Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show right here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I am, as always, your host, Tiger Paul Craven. We got a jam-packed show for you guys tonight. We're going to talk a little 2024 Clemson draft picks. We had 6 guys drafted in this past draft, so that's exciting. We'll talk about that a little bit. We will talk a little bit about our summer enrollees, our summer additions to this roster that is mostly constructed, but we got a few guys out there that will make some big impacts, I think, this upcoming season, and we'll get into that a little later in the show. We got a little transfer portal talk, and then to wrap it all up, we got our last segment, which will be around college football. But before we get into tonight's show, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. It would really help us out. We are getting ever so close to 5,000 subscribers. So if you could help us out with that, that would be greatly appreciated. Tell your friends, tell your coworkers, anybody out there who's a Clemson fan or who's not a Clemson fan about our channel, about the show that we do right here, the All In Show, right here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Bring some more people in and further the conversation about college football and our Clemson Tigers. Also, this is a live video, so hit that like button for us. That helps the algorithm, helps push it out to more people. And then last but certainly not least, if you would like to support what me and Jordan do here on the All In Show and the Voice of College Football, hit that super chat feature throughout the show. Not only will you be supporting what we do here, but you also will guarantee that your comment gets highlighted, responded to, and read during the live show. And with all of that said, and without further ado, let me bring on my co-host, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing good, man. Just bored at this point. You know, we're just trudging along in this off season.
We're in the depths. We're in the middle of the desert, and we're looking for water. If water was college football, that would be the analogy I would go with. We are in the middle of the desert right now. We're searching for that oasis that is far off. We can kind of see it. It's a mirage out there. It's called the fall. It's called college football. But we just got to keep trudging through the rest of this desert to get to our final destination.
Absolutely, man. And it just, we're at that point where the transfer portal window just closed today, and so now or yesterday, and so now we're just kind of waiting for the final dominoes to fall. Clemson came out relatively unscathed. It was close to nip and tuck at times, but they managed to get through it without any significant departures. So that was good. And so now we're just at that point where the people who have jumped in the portal that still have yet to announce. I guess they'll announce sometime. Obviously the window is just to jump into the portal, and you can then you can announce whenever you want. Obviously it depends on the school and their enrollment standards and the timeline for that. But now we're just and then now the only thing that's entertaining, college football related is watching Deion Sanders and his kids beef with players on Twitter and stuff like that. Like that's what's newsworthy right now.
Hey, so that's how you know college football news is slow when we're sitting on every word of what's going on with Colorado football. That's how you know it's a slow news cycle for college football. But it is interesting what's going on out there. We will get into that a little bit later in the show. We'll get into the transfer portal and everything as well. But before we start the show tonight, Jordan, let's give a shout out to our comment section. Those people that come here and support us each and every week, every time we go live. We got 17 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for showing up. Hit that like button while you're in here. Get your comments in. As you guys know, at the end of the show, me and Jordan will turn the show over to you guys and let you drive the last portion of the show and ask your questions and get our thoughts on any particular topics that you guys are interested in. And first and foremost, we got Droid132 in here. Thank you for showing up, man. We got Jay in here. We got Jackson Johnson in here. Thank you so much. Jackson Johnson's got a good comment in here. He says, shop Amazon using the link to support the Voice of College Football. If you guys didn't know, the Voice of College Football has an Amazon link. You guys see it right there in that comment. You don't have to do anything special. You just use that link when you're checking out on whatever you were going to buy on Amazon already. And the Voice of College Football gets a little bit of those proceeds. So do that if you can to support not only us, but the rest of the Voice of College Football. We got John Sarian in here as always. Thank you so much for showing up. Todd Gwynn is in here. Isaac
Resident Gamecock fan.
Todd Gwynn, our resident Gamecock fan. Shout out to you. Appreciate you always coming in, supporting the channel, supporting what me and Jordan do here. And even though he is a Gamecock fan, we do welcome him around here. It's nice to have the other perspective around every now and then. So, and then last, we got Isaac Smith in here. What's up, man? Good to see you. Thank you, everybody, for being in here. It has been a busy week, guys. Man, I think me and Jordan both been all over the place doing all sorts of things. Show started a little bit late tonight. My daughter had a softball game. I rushed home from that, and here we are to talk Clemson football. But guess what, Jordan? Regardless of how busy the week was, this is one of the highlights of each and every week. So excited to be here.
Absolutely, man. I always enjoy it, and this is what gets me through the off season, these days. So, it kind of makes things speed up a little bit. So, anytime I get a chance to come on here, it feels like we're getting that much closer. So,
yeah, absolutely. Definitely feels like we're getting closer. And with that said, let's go ahead and transition into our first topic of the night, Jordan. We're going to talk the Clemson 2024 draft picks. We had 6 guys get drafted last weekend in the NFL draft. Pretty exciting time to be a Clemson Tiger, man. I got to tell you, anytime a guy who has given as much as these guys have given to the program go on to hear their name called, I mean, it's a lifelong dream for most of these guys. And more will never hear their name called in the NFL draft than will. But it's really cool to see a few guys get to realize probably their childhood dreams. And it started off in the first round, obviously with Nate Wiggins. And we'll get into each and every player and where they got picked. But just give your thoughts overall on all the Clemson guys that were selected and, kind of, what it means for those guys.
You can't overstate it. Really, it's always just really cool to see, the guys that you've watched, come in as freshmen or even before that, if you watch them as recruits and seeing them commit to Clemson and kind of putting their future in the hands of Clemson University, Dabo Swinney, the rest of the coaching staff, and to see that journey be realized by hearing their name called. It's always really cool. And it's for most of these guys, it's a lifelong dream, and just to see it come true is really, really cool. And just a great group of guys in general, some really great stories, and really good football players that helps Clemson in a time where they needed it in a lot of cases. So, really happy for these guys. And we had a couple more guys that have signed undrafted free agent deals, and I'll give them a shout out too. And so it's really cool to see, Clemson players every single year. That's one of my favorite times of the year when football is not being played, is seeing our guys getting drafted and going to the league and seeing that life-changing money that, is not promised even for guys that are like 5-star, 4-star recruits. It's not a guarantee. And so for that to be actualized is always awesome to see.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's always really cool to see. And, in some cases it's life-changing money. And in other cases, these guys are still going to have to grind to get a roster spot. They're still going to have to grind to make a 52-man roster. So the journey is definitely not over for them, but it's definitely exciting to hear your name called. And let's go ahead and give a shout out to the 6 guys that heard their name get called in the 2024 NFL draft. And it started very late in the first round. We were actually on the show. Actually, were we still on last week when his name got called?
We weren't on when he got selected. I don't think. I think we ended
Yeah.
it. I think they were. I think it was probably around pick 22, pick 23. I think when we signed off.
Okay. Yeah. So we were hoping to hear his name called before we got off the show last week, last Thursday when the first round was going on. But he did eventually hear his name called at pick 30. Nate Wiggins goes to the Baltimore Ravens. I think I mentioned it to you. We were talking after the show, and we were looking at possibilities of where he could go. And I was like, Baltimore would certainly be a place because of all the things that they lost off, all the pieces they lost off of that defense from last year. They obviously need some pieces to rebuild and kind of keep that train going for them. So wasn't a surprise that Nate Wiggins went to the Baltimore Ravens at all for me. Round 2, pick 35, Rook Orohoro goes to the Atlanta Falcons, which I think is a great pick for them. Excited to see what he does there. He goes and joins a couple teammates in A.J. Terrell, Grady Jarrett, Ray McLeod, Bradley Pinion, I think, is there. So he's got a lot of Clemson guys there that are going to welcome him into that facility, and he's going to be playing, close to, where he played college at Clemson. So that's really exciting. Round 4, pick 127, Will Shipley went to the Philadelphia Eagles. Excited for him. Excited to see what he does over there in the Eagles offense with Jalen Hurts and all of those guys. Round 5, pick 138, Xavier Thomas. Everybody knows how we feel about Xavier Thomas on this show. I was so excited. You text me when he got his name called. So excited. I wasn't watching it. So I'm glad you text me and let me know. So excited to hear his name called, man. Like, absolutely. I was really, I thought that would happen, but, just when it finally did happen, just super happy for him. Hope he has a long career in there. And then round 5, also pick 155, Jeremiah Trotter goes and joins Will Shipley with the Philadelphia Eagles, completing the entire legacy of his father, Clemson, to the Philadelphia Eagles. Everything's full circle, and that was such a cool pick. It was cool to watch their GM and their draft room when they decided to pick Trotter, and they called him on the phone, and it was a pretty emotional thing, I think, for the Eagles and Jeremiah Trotter, just to kind of realize that childhood dream that he probably played in his head so many times growing up and seeing his dad do things in the NFL. So, and then round 6, pick 196, the last Tiger to hear his name called for the 2024 NFL draft was Tyler Davis, and he goes to the Los Angeles Rams. Tyler Davis, I mean, what can you say about Tyler Davis? He's a blue-collar guy, not flashy, doesn't talk a lot, pretty quiet, reserved guy, but on the field, he is completely dominant. He absolutely affects the line of scrimmage. He plugs up the middle. He makes it difficult for those interior offensive linemen to create holes for the running game. He can pressure the passer. So really excited to see what he'll do. So those are the 6 guys, Jordan. Was there any surprises there? Any thoughts for where those guys went and how you see those things working out for our Clemson Tigers that are now in the NFL, beginning their professional career in football?
Yeah, there were a couple of surprises. Not the guys that got selected, but some of the positioning and where they got selected. Just to go through all of them, just a quick notes on all of them. Nate Wiggins really liked where he ended up. Baltimore, they're a physical defense. That's what they've been known for. He certainly can play physical. They've played in, he has the ability to play off and play man. And they need a corner like that, to go opposite of Marlon Humphrey. So he's joining a pretty nice secondary. Kyle Hamilton's still there, Marcus Williams, and like that. I think that's going to be a really good fit because he plays with that kind of intensity that you expect from a Baltimore Ravens defense, and he's also gets to reunite with his old teammate Trenton Simpson, who I think is could potentially have a breakout year this year as well. So love where he ended up. Rukaroro, I think he came as a little bit of a surprise. I thought he was going to go a little bit later in the second round than he did. But the Falcons, they traded up. They really wanted him. There was a run of D tackle pretty much after he was picked. So they got their guy. So that was really cool. So he's, like you said, he's going to go join a lot of former Clemson guys, and obviously the last undersized defensive tackle that was drafted from Clemson to the Falcons turned out to be pretty good, in Grady Jarrett. So
no doubt about that.
Yeah, it tends to work. The Clemson has tended to work out in Atlanta as of late. So that was really cool to see. Who am I missing? Will Shipley. I think that was a great addition for Philadelphia. I thought they got great value too. Really interested to see kind of how he fits in that offense. They're going to use him also. I think he's going to be in the competition to be in that second, to be that second running back right away. And I think they're going to use him in a lot of different ways just because of his versatility in the passing game. So excited to see kind of how he fits into that whole puzzle. So happy for him. He's a hometown guy for me, so I've always been rooting for him since he's been in really his entire life, essentially. I think I first heard about him when he was in middle school, and just following his career through Weddington and to Clemson, it was always cool, and just to see him get drafted and see all of that realized was awesome. Then who am I? Who was next? Was it Trotter after him?
Hold on one second. Let me pull it back up.
No, it was Xavier Thomas, right? After
it
Shipley.
Sorry. Will Shipley, then Xavier Thomas.
Yeah. Okay. XT. Love the landing spot for XT. I mean, the Cardinals are a terrible organization, as they've been for a little bit, but.
Unfortunately, they didn't do much with our boy
Isaiah Simmons. No,
Isaiah Simmons over there. So
no, they did not. I think he's in a better spot now. But I think XT has a shot to really be one of the best edges on that team immediately. I think we've said it. I mean, XT has first round quality traits, and his tape is when he's healthy. He looks as twitchy as anybody in his class. And so to get him, I know the Cardinals were excited to get him that late. And I know there were, based on what, draft analysts and scouts have said, there were a lot of teams that were hoping he would fall to them. And so he falls to the Cardinals, who are basically reconstructing that defense from scratch. And I think they don't really have any, surefire options there. And so I think he could potentially be a starter in year one, and that's exciting because he and XT has always struck me, with how his career has played out. I always thought, I think his best football is still ahead of him, and
100%.
He'll be a better pro than his college career played out.
Yes.
So really excited for him, and then Jeremiah Trotter going to the Eagles, joining Will Shipley, following in the footsteps of his dad. That was really cool. I think he has a chance to work his way and be a contender for that linebacker spot. They don't have really answers at linebacker right now. So I think he's going to be in the mix to start right away. I think that, Nakobe Dean is still there. But they don't have any surefire, like, no doubt starters at linebacker right now. So that's, I think that was a really good landing spot for him, and just the culture fit and obviously the legacy fit. It made too much sense, and I know that the Eagles were elated to get him as late as they did.
That
was
they wanted him.
Certified steal.
Yeah.
That's
going to work out really well for them, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And then Tyler Davis going to the Rams. That Aaron Donald just retired, obviously there's a little bit of a hole as far as their defensive line is concerned. And I think he has a chance to compete right away. High energy guy, always was at Clemson, just from his with how he played, and he's an sort of undersized defensive tackle. but his play strength is extremely, is really, really good. I mean, you saw it at the combine. I think he was second amongst all defensive tackles in the bench press, and he's not even the biggest guy out there. So really excited and interested to see how he kind of fits into that defensive tackle room in year one. I think all of these guys have a chance. I think they ended up in great spots for them to be contributors. Because I think the teams that drafted them drafted for need, and I think that makes things a lot the path easier for them to get on the field early. So really, really excited to kind of see how those guys fit into the equation for their respective teams, and how much they play as rookies, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for all of them. And and that's right. I wanted to give a shout out to Will Putnam and Jalen Phillips for signing undrafted free agent deals. Jalen Phillips signed with the Chargers, I believe, and Will Putnam signed with
the Raiders.
The Raiders. That's right.
Yep.
Joining.
And then Sheridan Jones signed with the Bills.
So, did he sign? I know he got invited to a rookie camp, a mini camp, but
maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't sign. I did see his name associated with the Bills. So
yeah, I think he got invited to their rookie mini camp, but I don't think he signed a deal.
Well, hopefully that turns into something for him.
Yeah, that's good. That'd be great for him. And I don't know of anybody else that I think was associated as of yet.
Not yet. Those were the names that I kind of skimmed the internet for and figured out those are the three that have been invited under undrafted free agent type deal. So shout out to them. Will Putnam, Jalen Phillips, obviously signing deals already. Hopefully Sheridan Jones goes there and presses for rookie minicamp and can get a undrafted free agent contract out of it and try to make a 53-man roster. And all these dudes, frankly, are just they're going to be fighting for roster spots. The NFL is a cutthroat business, man. It's they operate in a very shrewd manner. It's very matter of fact. Either you make it or you don't. And just because you're drafted doesn't mean you're going to be a part of a 53-man roster. So I wish the best for all of these Clemson players. Hopefully they can stay healthy. I think that's the biggest thing when you're thinking about guys making the transition from college to pro, and kind of how long that the college season has become, and then training for the NFL combine, and then training for pro day, and then you get through that, and then it's boom right into rookie minicamp. These guys really don't get a break. So I think that's where a lot of these injuries come from. You see it a lot with these rookies. A lot of them come down with injuries, and you just get banged up, and that can be the difference in you making a 53-man roster and not making a 53-man roster. So wish these guys the best. Hopefully they can stay healthy. I think most of them landed, as you said, in really good positions. And we'll just keep an eye on them from afar. I'm not a huge NFL guy, but I always look for the Clemson players out there, always look for them to have success and root for them while they're out there. So shout out to all the Clemson 2024 draft picks and those that have signed undrafted free agent contracts. We thank them for everything, obviously, they've done for Clemson, and hopefully they go represent the Paul in a big way in the NFL.
Absolutely, man. Just really happy for these guys. Again, one of my favorite times of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff, man. If you guys have not already hit that like button, we got 29 people in the live chat right now. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, I'm sure you guys all are. But if by chance you're not, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And we always have the super chat feature available if you want to support what me and Jordan do here on the Voice of College Football. And with the draft in mind, there's another way that Clemson players have left in recent weeks, and that is via the transfer portal, Jordan. Now, you mentioned it in kind of our opening statements during tonight's show that Clemson did not really get hit very hard at all when it came to um, the transfer portal. It was definitely a lot easier than it could have been for the Clemson Tigers. But we did get hit with the transfer portal. We had two guys enter the transfer portal, obviously, and that was Adam Kasai. He went back to where did he go back to?
Minnesota.
Minnesota, thank you. Minnesota, where he was originally committed to before he decommitted and committed to Clemson. Spent a couple months on campus, obviously went through spring practice for whatever reason, whether it be his exit meeting with Coach Rumpf or where he fell on the depth chart. He felt like the best opportunity for him was to leave Clemson and go back to Minnesota. So he went ahead and did that. We also had Zach Owens, Flapjack, as he was nicknamed, spent a little time in Clemson. Came in injured, came in with his body a little overweight, not in playing shape, still not really in playing shape, still working towards that. Obviously, a new offensive line coach comes in. I think it's interesting that during spring, the two new coaches that were brought in after the season have the two players that are transferring, and that's nothing against the coaches we brought in. I think that just, when you commit to a coach and you think you're going to play for a coach, a lot of those guys, particularly further you get down the depth chart, they didn't come to play for Chris Rump. They didn't come to play for Matt Luke. So, they start looking for other opportunities. And a lot of that has to do with the exit meetings. A lot of that with Zach Owens had to do with injuries and his inability to just kind of get his body in a position where he could contribute on the field for Clemson. And he goes ahead. So he's going to be out there with Deion Sanders and Colorado. So that was kind of it for Clemson and the transfer portal. We didn't really make any big predictions coming out of spring about the transfer portal. We said that we thought we would lose some guys. But, I mean, overall, as a Clemson fan, if you're stepping back and you're looking at the guys you lost, not that you want to lose anybody, because anybody that you lose, regardless, is a depth piece. It's a guy that has been invested into by the coaches, by the support staff. It's a depth piece that you're losing. So you never want to lose really anybody. But I think Clemson made out as well as you possibly could, and probably as well as any university out there in college football when it comes to the spring transfer portal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the low departures I think it's a testament to the culture. I don't want to sound like I don't want to sound corny, but I do think it did play a role. Trust me, guys, Clemson was not, has not been immune to tampering and to, other programs reaching out to the players. It's been something they've been dealing with. And, some pretty high profile names were reached out to at different points this offseason. And, to retain them I think it speaks a lot. I mean, obviously, I think Clemson did a good job, and they've done a good job as far as NIL with player retention, and I think that certainly helped. But at the end of the day, Clemson's NIL apparatus is not at the level at some of these other programs that are just throwing around bags,
right?
And they certainly could potentially were offered more than what they're getting here, but I think one of the things that has been reiterated to the roster, the players, from Dabo and the coaching staff is that, ultimately, are you going to chase the money now? I mean, we can take care of you here and also make sure that you're getting the holistic experience of being a collegiate athlete, right, and making sure you're prepared for the next level, or you can chase the money now, go somewhere where maybe the development is not quite at the same level. The track record isn't the same. You're not familiar with the coaches. You might not fit in culture-wise or as far as playing time is concerned. It might be a different situation. So you can go and do all of that and go, jump into unfamiliar waters, or you can stay where you've built those relationships and you've been within the program and you know where you stand, and the coaching staff is fully invested in making sure that your goals are accomplished. So I think that was one of the biggest things that helped Clemson kind of withstand this portal window, because they certainly there were certainly points where it could have been a lot worse. So I think it just speaks to what Clemson has built over the last 15 years with Dabo Swinney as head coach. It's always been about more than football and the NFL. I mean, obviously that's what the ultimate dream of a lot of these kids are, but not everybody's going to make it. And it's really important that you take advantage of all the other opportunities that Clemson has provided for these players, and take advantage of being a part of a culture, a team, that a coaching staff that is truly invested in making sure that you succeed. So that's the long-winded way of saying, hey, props to Dabo, because there were points during this offseason where I was kind of worried about who might jump into the portal, because some of those could have been very, very big names, and guys that we definitely would not want to see go. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, we've talked about it on previous shows, but tampering is a huge problem in college football right now. There are other staffs that are contacting players. Maybe it might be indirectly, somebody not officially associated with this staff or that staff, but that stuff is happening around the country all the time, especially during these portal windows. And, to your point, shout out to Clemson, shout out to Dabo Swinney, shout out to the rest of the staff. Shout out to the 110 Society, Clemson's NIL directive out there, because Clemson, as we've stated before, they don't have the NIL money like a lot of these other universities, right? They don't have the NIL money like an Ohio State, a Michigan, an Alabama, these bigger schools, a USC with these massive alumni bases that they can pull all this money from. Clemson is a smaller university. They don't have near the pool of alumni to pull from. So, we've talked about it in the past, how they have to be very methodical. They have to be calculated with how they use every single NIL dollar, and they use it for roster retention. And I think it shows true, specifically in this last spring portal cycle. You don't see really any big hits to the Clemson roster. You lose, a couple depth pieces, a couple guys that were probably a little further down on the depth roster than they wanted to be, the depth chart. And you, as a Clemson fan, you couldn't hope for anything more other than how this spring portal cycle worked out for us. So I think it speaks to the health of the Clemson program. We are still a program that, can throw its weight around. We are still a program that can retain a lot of talent and can recruit a lot of talent. And I think that speaks volumes about not only Dabo, but the rest of the program. And you mentioned all the stuff that Clemson provides for these scholarship players, right? And these football players that are on the roster. It's not just about, the money that they're getting from the 110 Society. It's not just about, the development on the field, but you talk about Paul Journey, all the internships, all the big time businesses that these football players get exposed to when they're not on the football field, right? When they're doing their micro internships in the summertime and doing all this stuff that is going to carry them during life after football, because regardless of whether they make it to the NFL or not, there will be life after football.
Right.
So you have to prepare yourself. And I think Clemson does a really, really good job with that. So that's really good. Glad that we did not get beat up in the portal. I know Dabo takes a ton of heat for the portal. specifically because he does not pull anyone from the portal of significance. But we also do a really good job of not losing a ton to the portal, although we lose some. So,
yeah.
Shout out to Clemson and all of their supporting staff. We got 28 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for being here. Hit that like button while you're in here. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. We appreciate each and every one of you being here. 8 o'clock every Thursday. Me and Jordan do the All In Show right here. And Jordan, I think we will go ahead and move on to another way to add additions to your roster. Some people out there don't believe in high school recruiting anymore, but Clemson still believes in high school recruiting, and we still have 7 huge pieces that are going to become a part of the Clemson roster this summer. 7 guys that were not here for spring practice. They did not get to go through install and the spring game and all of that stuff, but they will be here for summer workouts for either the first summer session, or they'll definitely all be there for the second summer session, which I think starts June 27th. And those 7 individuals are Drew Woodaz, the brother of Wade Woodaz, coming in to play linebacker for us. Obviously, a position of need for the Clemson Tigers. Obviously, we have a good group of linebackers there. We saw how they performed in the spring game, but that depth chart is still kind of working itself out. So Drew Woodaz could come in and be one of those big depth pieces that help contribute at some point in time this season. Super athletic guy. Supposed to be the most athletic of the Woodaz family. So we'll see when he gets into Clemson and fall camp and kind of see what the word is around him. We got CJ Kuba Taylor, another guy that's going to come in and really help this roster out. Was a big recruit. And then a guy that we've talked about a lot, Jordan, TJ Moore. We saw what Brian Westow came in and did in the spring. We saw how he showed out in the spring game, had that really nice touchdown catch that was a very difficult catch that he pulled in. Heard all of the good things coming out of all the spring practices. So we know he was as advertised. He's the real deal, and we expect nothing less of TJ Moore. We expect him to come in and immediately start contributing to this offense. 6'3", 190 pound. He's kind of that big body type, that takeover type wide receiver that Clemson has been lacking for so many years. And that's what we expect TJ Moore to come in and become. So hopefully he comes in able to pick up that playbook really quickly. I got high hopes for this dude. I'm excited that he'll be on campus here soon. And I can't wait to hear what he's doing in fall camp. I literally cannot wait. We got Heaven Brown Schuler, defensive lineman coming in, Darian Mayo, another defensive lineman, Ashton Hampton, safety coming in, and then Christian Bentiker, tight end coming in. We got a really good tight end room. We saw it in the spring, but this dude's the real deal as well. Christian Bentiker, those of you that have not seen his tape, go out there and watch it. This dude is the real deal. I think he's going to be special at Clemson. He's going to be a problem. If we can figure out how to properly use him, make no doubt about that. So, Jordan, what are your thoughts on these last 7 pieces, if you will, that are going to complete the 2024 roster for Clemson football? How excited are you about these guys, and what do you think these guys' chances are? You don't have to go through all of them, but the chances of a couple of them of having real playing time and being contributors for Clemson this season.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on the linebackers, Drew Woodaz and CJ Kuba Taylor, 2 just really, really great athletes. So, they come in and help, and that's kind of the mold that Wes Goodwin has been trying to bring into this linebacker room. So you're starting to see his room kind of take on the identity of Wes. And these 2 guys are extremely athletic. CJ Kuba Taylor is a guy that hasn't been playing linebacker that long, but, he kind of jumped on the scene when teams came to scout his teammate Darian Mayo, and so it was just kind of one of those things where He jumped off the screen more than some of the guys that were higher recruited than him, and
Yeah.
I think that the potential there is really exciting. Obviously, you talk about TJ. I'll just hit on TJ Moore because I think he's just a guy that reminds you of the Clemson wide receivers of old. Just watching him play. I mean, obviously the 5-star pedigree, speaks for itself, but man, like he's a guy that looks ready and built to play at a high level right away. And it was all over his tape. And, it took forever for the recruiting industry to realize it because he wasn't a huge camp guy and they hadn't seen him a ton at Tampa Catholic. But, man, when you watch him, it's like he looks every bit the part of a 5-star wide receiver. And just the speed, the route running, the man catches everything, natural hands for the position.
Everything.
He really is a very well-rounded receiver that does a lot of things extremely well. So excited for him to get on campus. You mentioned Christian Bentaker, freak tight end. I mean, as physically gifted of a tight end as Clemson has had in some time. Just a man that big that moves the way he does is pretty abnormal. I have really high hopes for him in this offense. We'll see kind of how he factors into the tight end room because he does bring very high level skill set right off the bat, and he's joining a really what we think is a pretty talented tight end room. And then Heaven Brown Schuler will add to that defensive line depth. Massive human being, looks like a grown man. I don't know if you saw his prom pictures, like he posted them like a while back.
Yeah.
Like he looked like I was like, this is not a 17-year-old. This is like this dude is 26.
Dude looks at least 25.
Yeah,
this man should be entering the NFL draft. Dude.
He definitely looks the part. I'm excited for him. And then Ashton Hampton, late take from Florida, just really versatile defensive back. Will play safety, can play corner, will play nickel. He brings a lot of scheme versatility. Really like his tape, and I think I hit on everybody. I believe I did.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Even though you said I didn't have to hit on everybody, but I did anyway. But of those guys, obviously, I think if I had to put odds on who is the most, primed to make an impact immediately, I think is obviously TJ Moore. And I just think he brings a different body type, skill level, and we're really high on we're relatively high on this wide receiver room this year. But I think TJ Moore is a guy that brings that truly 5-star pedigree that we just haven't seen. And him along with Bryant Wesco, I think bring just kind of that. These are guys that you see being taken early off of draft boards. That's what they remind you of. So,
I mean, he's got a skill set that you feel like as long as he can learn the playbook and understand that stuff, like he's got a skill set that's just going to be really hard to keep off the field. I mean, his body style, like we just need a guy like that can go in there and just take over. We really need that. And Adam Randall's a guy that could be that. Obviously, we've seen some improvement from him. Specifically towards the end of last season, and then this spring as well. So if he continues to make that growth, obviously he can be that guy as well. But you got to think a guy like TJ Moore is going to come in and be a significant contributor to this Clemson offense. And frankly, we need him to be because we do have, as good as we feel about the wide receiver room, we do need those bigger guys that can, go up and get balls and make these catches and, be kind of, these possession type wide receiver, these boundary guys that are really going to affect the defense. Right. So, I think he's definitely probably the one that stands out the most that'll probably contribute this season. But You think about a guy. I mean, defense, Darian Mayo. He's a guy that could come in and contribute for sure.
Especially with the departure of Adam Kasai. I mean,
go.
again, he wasn't, a factor as far as, playing, but
Right.
that's just one less guy that he's going to have to compete with.
That's right.
And he's extremely talented and massive, 6'7". You don't really see that many, defensive ends that are that big and that tall. And he plays every bit with that size and length. So, I mean, he's a guy that can absolutely, factor into this defensive end room and kind of take some pressure off of, TJ Parker, Peter Woods, who's going to be playing some defensive end, Caden Story, Cade Denhoff. I think he's a guy that could potentially factor into the rotation, depending on how he adjusts in fall.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I'm excited to see kind of how he comes in and how quickly he develops within the program. Another guy I'm gonna keep my eye on. So those are the summer roster additions for Clemson, and I think it's a really good haul, man. It's a really good group of guys that haven't been on campus yet. It's going to make, I think, a huge addition to the roster come fall camp. Obviously, they'll have summer workouts, but we're not really privy to any information happening during summer workouts or any of that stuff. The first time we will hear about any of these guys will be fall camp. So we'll look forward to hearing about all of these guys come fall camp and how they're shaking out on the depth chart, and are they pushing guys? Are they competing for playing time? Are they competing for these depth spots that are still unsecured? It'll be interesting to see, but we got a lot of good guys. 7 of them will be coming here shortly and be on Clemson's campus probably within the next month or two. Obviously, if they're going to be here for session 1, they'll obviously be on campus in probably a couple weeks. Session 2 of summer workouts starts, like I said, June 27th. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but a lot of stuff to be excited for if you're a Clemson fan. A lot of stuff to give you a little bit of hope for the future and the turnaround of this program. So we got 32 people, Jordan, in the live chat right now. Go ahead and hit that like button if you guys haven't already. Don't forget, the Voice of College Football has an Amazon link. Jackson posted it in the chat earlier. So if you guys go shop on Amazon, use the link in the description of this video, and it will give the Voice of College Football a little bit of kickback from Amazon. It won't cost you any extra. All you got to do is use the code, and that helps out the Voice of College Football. Also, if you want to help out with me and Jordan do here on the All In Show, if you want to hit that super chat feature, go ahead and do that as well. We would appreciate it. And Jordan, let's go ahead and transition into the last topic of the night. We're rolling right through all of our topics tonight, going at a good, healthy pace here. And
we're doing pretty good for us.
We're really good. This is like record time. We're out here sprinting tonight because, hey, excuse me,
it's all a Nate Wiggins 40-yard dash.
Yeah, as all of you guys know, me and Jordan can sit on here and talk about one topic for 45 minutes. Then we realize we got 4 more topics to talk about. We're like, here we go. We got to roll through these. So we're cruising right along. We're working at Mach 3 today, if you will. So first topic in the all around college football segment, we're going to talk a little Georgia football. We're going to talk a little Kirby Smart becoming the highest paid coach in college football. He signs a new deal with the Georgia Bulldogs that pushes his contract out until 2033. He will now be making $13 million per year. Obviously, like I said before, making him the highest paid college football coach in the country. Jordan, no real surprise here. If I was Georgia, I would have done the same thing. I'm going to pay him as much as he wants. I'm going to lock him in for as long as he's willing to sign for, and I'm going to make that buyout as ridiculous as I possibly can so that nobody can lure him away. I don't think any college could lure Kirby Smart away, but you always got to think the NFL. That's always a possibility. Some of these, not all of them, but a lot of great college football coaches want to see if they can then hack it in the NFL as well. So if I was them, I would do exactly what they're doing, and I would hike up that buyout specifically for the NFL because I don't think Kirby Smart would leave for any other job other than maybe a head coaching job in the NFL.
Yeah. I have a conspiracy theory that Georgia knows that L in Atlanta is coming, and Kirby is doing his best to kind of bribe that buyout out now. So when they lose that first game, that they can't they can't take it, they can't use it against him in contract negotiations because I've already got my extension.
No, yeah, that's right. He had to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah. No, but in all seriousness, yeah, I mean, makes sense. He's at the top of the sport right now. Georgia's been the best program for the last 3 or 4 years. Yep. 2 national championships in the last 3 years. I mean, sounds familiar. And I think it makes sense. They're rolling right along, and they project to have be right in the thick of the national championship conversation again this year. And he's done a phenomenal job at that program. So, I mean, it makes sense, which means that, if Clemson gets back on the mountaintop, we're going to have to – he's put a little bit of pressure on our athletic department because then, Dabo is going to be like, well, especially if he beats Kirby.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I know. It's like, where's mine at? Where's my pay raise at?
Look. I mean, I in no way, shape, or form saying Kirby doesn't deserve it at all, or any of these coaches don't deserve it. That's for these athletic departments to surmise and figure out, if you will. But these coaching contracts are getting crazy, man. Like, all you got to do is land one of these major college football coaching contracts. You don't even got to be good. Yep. You can suck for 3 years or 2 years or whenever they fire you, and you're set, man.
Like, just don't do anything stupid off the field.
Yeah, don't do anything that could get you fired. Don't mess around with any of your assistants. Don't do anything crazy to players. Don't be hazing your team. Don't do anything outside.
Don't call escort services with university phones.
Don't do that, Hugh Freeze. But don't do any of that stuff. You are set for life. You are set. You are ready to go, man. But I guess the difficult part is just getting one of those universities to hire you on with one of those contracts. So I just think it's interesting, man. Like these contracts are getting pretty crazy. I also think, with the – let me get your thoughts on this. With the possibility – I wouldn't even say possibility. It's going to happen eventually. But the revenue sharing that's going to eventually come down the pipe for college football, is that going to affect what these universities can pay these coaches? Because at a certain point, like, the money has got to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So this money that they get from the playoff and the TV revenue and all of this stuff, if now a portion of that's going to the players, does that affect the market of salaries for coaches? Again, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
I mean, potentially. I'm not really super educated on how those pools of money are divvied where and how, like, when Clemson gets their annual TV revenue cut from the ACC, like where does that?
Yeah, where's that money go?
Yeah, I have no idea where that money goes.
Does that strictly go to the athletic department?
Yeah.
Or is that divvied up throughout the university for, to build, a new business school building, or, where does that? I don't know.
I'm not really sure about that.
But it'd be interesting because I think that's going to have an effect on how things are done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And unfortunately, I think when revenue sharing happens, you're going to see some non-revenue generating sports disappear.
Oh, yeah.
From colleges, because that is paid for mainly with football money, and then in some places basketball money as well. But when that money starts getting reallocated to other places, i.e., the players, not that they don't deserve it. Nobody get misconstrue what I'm saying. Now, I'm not saying they don't deserve the money. Obviously, they deserve part of that TV revenue because they are the ones putting the product out there on the field. But I just think it's going to be interesting to see the ripple effects that are going to eventually come from a revenue sharing model that I think in college football at this point is pretty much inevitable. It's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's when.
Yeah, absolutely. I just it's going to be it's definitely going to be interesting because I just it how they sort of divvy up that money and where where these revenue streams are coming from and where they put them. I think will play a huge role in it, but it absolutely will affect how universities and athletic departments um, run things. So we're getting closer to that. I'm just ready to rip the Band-Aid off and just kind of iron all this out. But of course, like with everything in college athletics, it has to happen super slowly, unless it's really. I mean, there's no other examples of of change. I mean, other than the NIL and the transfer portal, everything else has been a slow, arduous process.
Right.
And a revenue sharing model that has never been seen before in college athletics, it will definitely be dragged out as long as possible.
Guaranteed.
So,
Guaranteed.
but yeah, I'm ready to I'm ready to figure that out. And so, what will college athletics look like a decade from now? Will football be completely separate from the university, and like we're just schools will just license out their colors and mascot to basically semi-pro teams, and that's what we call college football. Like, I don't know. I've heard that thrown out there before. It seems like an extreme example, but anything's possible at this point. I really don't know, but it absolutely will affect how universities operate and kind of, especially with how recruiting works. Like, will there be salary caps? Will there be I mean, is there like a universal? Will there be a universal base pay? Will there be what is the baseline and who is subject to those rules because there's so much disparity in athletic department budgets.
And then is it all going to be the same? Like, is it going to be, college football as a whole? This is what you get paid as a scholarship athlete, college football player.
Yeah.
Or is it going to be like a conference by conference? Like SEC players get this, Big Ten players get this, ACC players get this, so on and so forth. Like, because that'll be interesting too. Obviously, the SEC and the Big Ten would be able to afford to pay their players more if they're allowed to with the revenue sharing model. So that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out as well. I mean, there's so many pieces and so many avenues that you can go down and kind of talk about and play the what if game, but the massive changes in college football are not done at all. But I'm just ready for it to, if we could just like fast forward to whatever final destination we're heading towards at this point. Not that it's going to be perfect and not that, maybe we don't even like it that much, but I'm just tired of I guess all the uncertainty and all just the, this, that, the back and forth of all. I'm ready to get it settled down and what is major college football going to be, in the foreseeable future, right? Like, let's go ahead, rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get there. And let's just deal with whatever ripple effects, whatever ramifications come from the decisions that are made, I guess. So, but again, like you said, it's not going to be a quick process. This is going to drag out several more years. It will eventually get there, but it will not be painless or quick, to say the least. But transitioning to the next topic on around college football, let's talk about Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes out there, man. A lot's been going on with Deion Sanders in Colorado. namely in the transfer portal. He had quite a few individuals leave. Some bigger name individuals, Cormani McLean, probably the most noteworthy of all the transfers that left Colorado. And according to Dion, he said to the media, "Who are they? They're just backups. Who did we lose?" Which may or may not be true, whatever the case may be, however he feels, right? He's been going in on Twitter a little bit about individuals that have left the program, and posting some stat lines and other things like that. Shador Sanders has been doing the same thing, going obviously to bat for his dad, with some comments that have come from some of the transfers about Colorado and I didn't want to play for clicks anymore and all this kind of stuff. There's tons of drama around Colorado, obviously, and with the transfer portal. Obviously, my opinion, I don't think the way that Dion is approaching the job at Colorado is sustainable. You can't just live by the transfer portal. It's not possible. The transfer portal is great. It's great when you take a new job, you can flip a roster really quickly and you can start winning games a lot sooner than it used to be possible, maybe 5 years ago in college football. But it's not a sustainable way to build a program long term. You have to build through high school recruiting. You have to have a foundation of good recruits that you are growing up, that you are developing, that you are pouring into, that are growing, throughout 3-4 years of their college career, and contributing to your football team. It's good to cherry pick and grab players and fill holes and weaknesses and all of that kind of stuff. But the way that he goes about it, I think, is obviously, again, he may prove everybody wrong and it may work. I just don't think it will. What are your thoughts on what's going on at Colorado, all the drama surrounding the program, them being on Twitter, going at players going at them, all of it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man. It's a very complex. When talking about Dion, it's always a really complex issue because there's not really anybody in college athletics like him, and kind of how the circumstances with how he got to Colorado and just kind of his pedigree as a former NFL player and just kind of the air that he has about himself is just different than any other person that you can talk about in college athletics.
Entertaining guy,
a very entertaining guy. Yeah.
Very entertaining.
I think what we're realizing is that Dion. I think Dion got the Colorado job too soon. I think I don't want to say he didn't exactly like he wasn't ready for everything that came with being a Power 5 head coach or Power 4 at this point. Head coach. It doesn't seem to me that he was is quite interested in doing all of the things that is necessary to actually create a sustainable program. It makes you wonder. I mean, if Shador and Shiloh, like if his kids weren't in college, would he have taken the job? I think one of the things that really hurt him is the elimination of the one-time transfer rule. And it's something that's been kind of talked about because I think, when he got to Colorado, he absolutely needed to overhaul that roster. I think he did what he had to do to, get, some help and make that roster more competitive. And he had the air about him and the gravitas to do that. And he attracted a lot of big names and got a lot of big time players to come there. But obviously we saw the results last season. They started out hot, but that roster was, they had a couple of really nice players, but the depth was horrendous. And they ran, schematically, I thought they ran an offense that wasn't quite to Shador's skill sets, and I don't think they had the personnel to do what they wanted to do. They had one of the better offensive coordinators in the sport, So I don't think it was a coordinator problem, even though he was scapegoated. And so I think the thing that really hurt Deion was first of all the elimination of the one-time transfer rule.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was fully prepared to deal with what it actually means to be a P4 head coach, and not just from the roster management side of things, but the personal aspect of it. And I think what we're seeing on Twitter is the ramifications of him neglecting the personal aspect of it.
Yeah.
Again, none of us are in the in those team meetings and those practices to see what's going on, what's being said. But it's very clear that to me, just based off of how Deion himself has spoken about this and how the kind of the attitude towards which he goes about addressing these issues. It's very clear that he had his favorites, which to a degree happens everywhere.
Sure.
But I think one of the things, I think the players that weren't his favorites were very obviously not his favorites. And he basically treated them like dead weight. And I think the fact that the one-time transfer rule was eliminated meant that he couldn't bring guys in and expect them to stay, because now they can just if they feel like they've been wronged or mistreated, they can just leave now. And so I think that's hurt him a ton, and that's why you're seeing all of these defections. And some of these players are big time names. You mentioned Cormani McClain, Dylan Edwards. Just left the program as well. He's at Kansas State. He committed to Kansas State. And I don't think he hasn't done enough on the high school recruiting side to make sure that he's actually building, building the requisite depth and roster continuity to where he's not having to rely on the transfer portal every cycle. And I think the shine has worn off pretty quickly because of that. And so, yeah, man, the way he's gone about all of this, I think has been. I think he has every right to defend his program. I'll say that. I think he has every right to defend his program. And if a player comes out and says something that you think is slanderous, I don't want to say slanderous, but wrong or kind of detrimental to kind of the image of the program, I understand responding. But when you turn this into you're going back and forth on Twitter and you're posting a player's stats, and you're saying you got your kid on social media saying I don't even remember him, or is like I don't think he even played, and kind of it gets beyond defending the program, and now you're kind of being a bully. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with kind of how Deion has operated his program. I don't think he's doing all of the things that are requisite in order to make Colorado a sustainable contender. And I think they're gonna suffer for it. And I mean, he's still gonna attract guys because he's Deion.
Yeah,
but I don't think he's ever going. It doesn't seem like the long-term future of Colorado. I don't think there is a long-term future, to be honest, because especially when Shedeur declares for the NFL draft and he's up and left. Like, is there any? Does Deion really have a investment in Colorado football to really want to build that, or is he going to say, well, I've done what I've done what I set out to do. My kids are in the league or out of college, and I'm just not really interested in doing all this anymore. And so I'm not. I'm not in Deion's head. I don't know what his intentions are, but it just seems to me with how he's gone about doing things that I don't. The long term, like I can't see I personally just don't see Deion coaching at Colorado in 2 or 3 years. I don't, and not because he got fired. Just I don't think he.
No, I think he's going to voluntarily move on.
Yeah.
Like I really do, and I think the writing's on the wall. If you look at the way that he is operating within the Colorado program, he's not building a football program. He's trying to build a team from year to year. That's all he's doing. He's not building a program. He's building individual teams. So last year he built a team via the transfer portal. This year he's trying to do the same thing. He's trying to build a team via the transfer portal. As soon as his sons are no longer at Colorado, I think he's no longer at Colorado. I don't think honestly, and again, I could be wrong. I'm not in Deion's head, but I don't think he truly has an interest in being a college football coach long term. Because if he did, I feel like he would be approaching the Colorado job in a different way. He'd be there trying to build a culture. He'd be trying to build a fundamental, the fundamentals of his program and installing his culture and recruiting the type of guys out of high school that he wanted to kind of be the core of his program. And he's not doing that. He's going to grab, the best available that will come to Colorado out of the transfer portal and maybe taking a guy here, a guy there from high school. That's not really a guy to me, outside looking in. That's not really a guy to me that is planning on being there long term. And I think Colorado is going to be in a bit of trouble when Deion decides to leave, because everybody's going to hit the transfer portal, and that athletic department's going to be sitting there picking up the pieces. They're going to have to hire a coach, and that coach is going to be in a really tough position.
And you mentioned, him, just, heavily relying on the transfer portal, and he's not even fully investing into that. I mean, you've got Shador on Instagram posting on a story, transfers hit me up. Yeah. Like, are we being serious? Like, is Deion not even contacting these kids himself? He's got his kids doing the transfer portal recruiting for him. I'm like what? I mean, what's going on here? So it's like, it makes you wonder, like, is he really that invested in what he's doing, or is this just kind of a means for him to kind of engineer and coordinate Shador, especially his career, and make sure that he gets to the league?
And I mean, if it seems like that's the case, and if it is, hey, I guess he's doing what he feels he needs to do to get Shador Sanders, and maybe Shiloh, I don't know, to the league. And like I said, once they're gone, I don't think he'll be at Colorado anymore. I don't think he'll be in college football, period. I don't think he's going to coach at the college level again, or I don't know if he's going to coach football again at all. Like, I don't know if Deion really wants to be a football coach. It more so to me seems like he wants to ensure that his kids are propped up and have the best opportunity to make it to the league. And after that happens, I think he's going to step away.
I'll tell you what, man, this is going to make a great, no matter how this plays out, this is going to make a great ESPN 30 for 30 one day.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And they got the cameras following the program, like, in and out. So, there's tons of, like, unreleased footage that, I mean, if they sign a deal with a producer or whatever, or produce it themselves, like, there's probably a lot of really interesting content there that would probably blow people's minds and be super entertaining to watch.
Yeah. But, I just, it's something that I'm still, it's a very complex, because, I want Deion Sanders to succeed. I mean, he's one of the most, it's hard not to talk about Deion Sanders, and there's definitely a racial aspect to it, to that conversation. But I definitely want him to succeed as a black coach, in a predominantly white field as far as college football coaching is concerned. And and that's what makes it hard to, you have to criticize him, because he's doing things that you just, flat out should not be doing as a college football head coach.
Right.
and like I want him to succeed, but it's like, what am I like? What are we talking about? Like, what are we even being serious? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, and that's kind of the problem, for me. And it just, I don't think he's fully interested in being, an actual, beacon for change, or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
or being an example, or a role model for other, for other African American head coaches. I think he's in it for Dion
If you had
and
asked
his
me a year
personal.
ago, I would have been like, man, like Colorado may have done something here, because I think how he initially walked into Colorado was, maybe rub some people the wrong way because the footage got out there. But that's kind of like what you have to do when you walk into a program like Colorado, who hadn't won a game, who probably has a roster full of guys that probably shouldn't be playing at the Power Five level at that point in time, right? So I didn't have a problem with like his initial introduction into Colorado or how he was doing things. I know some people don't like, the flashy, the cameras, the all that. That's
Right.
just kind of beyond style. I didn't have an issue with it. I thought it was entertaining, and I thought Colorado might have done like a really good thing, and there might be a future. But as I see him, now in year two, and you just don't see him doing the things that are necessary to create a successful program, you just kind of have to wonder, like, is he fully invested in Colorado football, or is it just about, getting a certain group of players to the league and then, walking away? Um, but I mean, I think he had the ability to
Yeah.
probably do something special, but I just don't think that, like, I don't know if that's what he wants to do. And I
Right.
mean, by his actions, I think it's pretty clear that like he really doesn't want to. Like,
Yeah.
that's not really um, something that he's willing to do long term. So
I would be happy, and listen, I'd be happy to be proven wrong. And he
Mhm.
goes out, and all of a sudden he's landing. I mean, and again, it's hard at a place like college. I mean, no matter who you are, it's hard to recruit to Colorado, especially these days. But you don't even see, like, he's not even trying. It doesn't feel like he's even trying. And he hasn't. The Colorado, the roster is still in not great shape. He's, the trenches are still pretty terrible. I mean, I think they've got a couple of good pieces young pieces that they'll need to start right away. Um,
yeah,
but I don't know. It's not going the way that I thought it would. So far, like and not even from an on-field result standpoint, because I knew that was probably going to take some time. It's how he's gone about
right. Yeah,
doing this. I don't think he's ever going to be able to create a situation where he's building the roster up enough, because he's going to have guys constantly leaving, because he's not really in. He has the guys that he brings in that he wants to play, and then everybody else seems to be kind of an
right,
afterthought. And
right.
that's kind of the personal aspect that we were talking about of being
Yeah,
a head coach. Like, you're going to have every coach has players that they know this guy isn't ever going to play here.
yeah.
Just
Of
from
course.
whether it's because they are just not good enough to play, or there are just guys that are just way better than them that
Hmm.
need to play over them. Like,
Right.
every coach has those guys on the team, and but you have to you have to treat that with a certain level of sensitivity that I don't think he's done, based off of what's been said.
Yeah, and you got to treat them as contributors to the team, because at the
Right.
end of the day, even those dudes running your scout team, they're contributing to wins. You
Yep.
know, they're giving that first team defense, that first team offense, the look that they need to prepare for the upcoming game. So, yeah, are they ever going to play on the field? Are the fans ever going to know their name? No, but you can't treat them like they're nothing either, because they won't stick around. And why would they? So, um, I think, look, Neon Dion will always be a polarizing figure, no matter what he does. Like, however he goes about things, he's always going to be controversial, just because of how out there he is, and basically unapologetically, he's Dion, right?
Yeah, he's Dion.
He doesn't really care what anybody else says, so that's always going to rub a certain amount of people the wrong way. But we'll see how the season turns out for him. I'll be interested to see if kind of our prediction comes true that hey, once Shadur and Shiloh are no longer college football players, that he moves on from college football as well, or that we get proven wrong and he really does want to be a college coach and he's just maybe going about it the wrong way, and maybe he's got some stuff to learn and he's going to develop as a coach and keep doing this thing. We'll see. I don't think so, but only time will tell.
Yeah. John Sarian makes a great point. Yeah, he says for sure Dion is effective at getting 20 minutes of attention on the Clemson channel. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what we're talking about. I mean,
yeah,
you talk about Dion, you're going to get a really good conversation because it's everybody has an opinion, whether one way or another, or
love him or hate him.
Yeah. There's going to be some strong opinions, and it's a multifaceted discussion because of there really is nothing like his situation in college sports, and really what we've seen in college sports. So it makes it all the more easy to talk about, and you get lost in the conversation. But we'll leave the conversation there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thought it was something to talk about, and again, slow news day. That's what we're talking. That's what we're talking about.
Slow news day in college football. Not a ton of going on in recruiting. Obviously, no football on the field happening. Spring games are over, I think, at this point. We're just we're in the middle of the desert, like we said at the top of the show. We're in the middle of the desert, and the water is metaphor for water is college football, and that's way off in fall, and we're kind of wandering through the desert trying to get there. So but I think we'll go ahead and leave that there. That completes the plan portion of tonight's show. Thank you guys so much for being here. We got 28 people still in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for showing up, for getting into the live chat, for hitting that like button for us, for being subscribed to the channel. I noticed that we got a lot of non-Clemson fans in the chat today. Shout out to you guys for coming in. Appreciate all the people from other fan bases that come in and communicate with us throughout the show. We do mainly talk Clemson football, obviously, but all fan bases are welcome and all perspectives are welcome here as well. So, Jordan, let's go ahead and get into turn the show over to the people, get into their questions, their comments. Let's see what the people want to talk about for 20 or so minutes here.
Yeah, man, let's do it. We got some comments started from throughout the show because we wanted to start being able to highlight for those of you guys that ask questions at the beginning or middle of the show. Want to hit on those and not just address all the ones that people put in. When we get to the comment portion of the show. So let's start with Jay. He asked this before the show even got on, so thank you for getting your question in, Jay. He asked, this may require some research, but where would y'all rank our wide receiver tight end room within the ACC? I think that's a great question. Because there are a lot of teams in the ACC with kind of revamped, I don't want to say revamped, but new look wide receiver rooms. And not always because of portal additions, but also because of departures. So it kind of makes it hard to kind of gauge. But just kind of spitballing, like I think Clemson's wide receiver, especially when you factor in wide receiver and tight end room, I think they're top 3, top 4 at minimum. I really think this group is pretty good, in pretty good shape, and there are not a lot of teams with proven production coming back at the wide receiver position. We've talked about a few teams. NC State has definitely done a lot to revamp theirs. I would throw them in that conversation. Miami, I think they've done a lot to kind of get that wide receiver room back to kind of where they want it to be, because they've been pretty average at that position for a while now, but they've recruited it well, and they have a lot of talented pieces in that room now. Florida State, I'm still kind of wait and see. I think they have a lot of guys that are interesting, but watching them throughout, and just from what I've read throughout the spring, that's still kind of a concern. Losing. I mean, you lose a guy like Keon Coleman, who was a borderline first-round pick. I think he was the first pick of the second round.
Yeah.
And then Johnny Wilson as well. Like, those were your two big targets, gone at the same time. So you're going to have guys to step up there. Whether it's Malik Benson, who the transfer wide receiver from Alabama, who came in and it seems to be kind of one of the front runners to be a big time playmaker for them. Is it the 5-star freshman, true freshman from last year, Hakeem Williams? Does he make take a step? And I don't know, but I think Florida State is still kind of a question mark for me from a receiver standpoint.
Yeah.
Who else do I want to throw out there? Virginia Tech is interesting because they have a lot of experience coming back, and they brought in some transfers. I don't think there's really I don't think there's many teams in the ACC that I think I would put up there as top, at the very top. Maybe Georgia Tech. They had a silently really good wide receiver room last year. I think maybe Georgia Tech I would throw them in there, but I think Clemson's is right up there with any of those teams. So I'd say top 3 or 4 at minimum.
Clemson's definitely near the top. You think about Miami, North Carolina State, Virginia Tech. Obviously, you mentioned Georgia Tech, but what I will say about Clemson's wide receiver room is we do have some guys, some returning production, right? Like, you got some proven guys in that room that are returning. You think about Antonio Williams coming off basically a season of being injured. We know what he did his freshman season. You saw kind of the return of that explosiveness in the spring game. So you expect him to have a big season. You know what Tyler Brown did last season. You've seen the slow progression of Adam Randall, but it seems to finally be clicking, right? Troy Stellato. I mean, you got a lot of guys coming back that produced for you last season. And then not to mention the addition of, we talked about him earlier in the show, Brian Westco, TJ Moore. I think they're going to be big-time contributors to this offense. And I didn't even talk about the tight ends.
Right.
We have the weapons. We just got to put it all together, and the quarterback play has to be there. But this notion that Clemson doesn't have the weapons needed at wide receiver, I don't believe that's the case anymore. Like, that cannot be said, barring injuries. Obviously, injuries can decimate any position group if enough of them happen. But fully healthy group with the guys that we got, I mean, we're definitely top 3, I think.
Yeah, I was being conservative because I mean, really, if this group reaches their potential, I think they are the best.
Yeah, because I mean, not only from just the guys we've named and their talent, but the depth, the amount of guys that we have that can truly contribute. I mean, we got a pretty, robust wide receiver room.
From different body types, skill sets.
Yeah.
I mean,
it looks completely different than it did a couple years ago, where we kind of just had the same body type all over, right?
And then none of them could stay healthy, and none of them could get open.
And none of them could catch the ball. None of them could stay healthy. Quarterbacks couldn't get them the ball.
Nope.
It was just a slew of issues. But I mean, like you said, it's a really diverse wide receiver room by body type, by skill set. I can't wait to see what they do, man. I think it's going to be a big year for the Clemson wide receiver room and the tight end room. Because, I mean, these tight ends, we got our weapons, man. Like, we just got to use them properly in this offense. They're weapons, man. They just are. But again, that's all potential. We're projecting where they could be. But I think definitely top three. If I had to guess, I had to nail it down right now. I agree. Definitely top three.
Yeah.
With the potential of being the best in the conference if we can get our stuff together this
Yeah.
fall. That's a big if. That's a big if.
Yeah. That is a big if. Yeah, that was a great question though, Jay. That's a fun one, and I think that's something we'll definitely have to revisit when the season comes. Timothy Green gets in. He asks a question. I think is he West Virginia? Is that a West Virginia
Looks
logo?
like West Virginia,
I
yeah.
think so. He says, so I have a question. How does your overall team look this year in your own opinion? I mean, that's a tough one to kind of pin down. Do you want like a record prediction, or I know you asked this way earlier, so you might not even be listening at this point, but I don't know. Kind of keep it simple and make it quick. I mean, I think the overall bar for success, a successful season for this team, it's probably 10 wins. Get back to the 10-win mark,
Yeah.
with the potential to win more than that. But that's kind of me spitballing, and I could feel very differently when fall rolls around. But just based off of the roster makeup, you have. I think you're going to be pretty good on defense again. And offensively, I think you are, from a skill talent standpoint, you're in better shape than you've been in a while. But quarterback is still a question. Offensive line, can they be good enough? I think they can. And do they take to this new coaching, and do we start to look like the offensive line that I think we have the pieces to be? Yeah, those are that's the question, and ultimately decides whether this team is, pretty good, solid to, ACC championship, college football playoff contender. So,
yeah. I think for me, similar to you, I would, just putting it very simply, confident in the defense. And as you mentioned, just some big question marks on offense. I think we got the potential to be really good on offense, but you got to wonder if the quarterback position is going to take that step necessary, and the offensive line. Those are the two keys to, are those two position groups in
those are
particular.
unfortunately two very big keys.
Yeah, those are like basically, if those two position groups aren't good, your offense is not good. And that's why I said this offense has potential to be really, really good this season, but it's a big if because we got to kind of put those two position groups together. And we just don't know if it's going to happen. And really, we won't know until we see this team run out there. What is it, August 31st?
Yeah.
In Atlanta against UGA. What a hell of a way to start the season.
It is.
Not how I would have drew it up.
Yeah.
But hey, guess what? We'll figure out real quick how good or not good this Clemson Tiger team is in 2024. There will be. We won't have to wait. We won't have to be like, well, we beat Charleston Southern in week 1 really bad. We put up 450 yards of total offense. And then obviously all the other people be like, well, it was Charleston Southern. Who cares, right? There won't be those questions. Week 1, we play the Georgia Bulldogs. So if this offense is successful, it will be a huge deal because it will be against one of the, if not the best team in the country, defense as well. Or, we'll get completely obliterated and, we'll feel not so good about the rest of the season at that point. We'll see.
We shall see. Jay with another question. He said, I'd love to see some research done on how NIL has affected teams' locker rooms. I'm sure teammates let others know how much they're making. Yeah, it's definitely a very big problem just from, people that are privy to that, those kinds of conversations. Yeah, it is something that, programs are dealing with. It's like, because everybody thinks they're worth, this much. And sometimes it's more than really what they probably deserve. And so it always makes it hard because you're talking about college kids. They're never going to be confidential about. Most of them are not going to be super confidential about what they're making, and even then they're going to hear from other team players from other schools and about what they're making and what kind of opportunities are out there, and that's one of the things that makes it so difficult because that's all these players, especially players at the caliber of the Clemsons, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Michigans, the Ohio States. Like these guys are very well familiar, connected to each other. They camp together. Sometimes they went to they played in the same state. They were in the same recruiting classes. They competed against each other. So you're always when you recruit from the same pool of players, there's going to be a lot of interconnected communication, and so it's like if player A finds out that player B is making $500,000 in NIL deals from Alabama, and they're only making and that's probably on the one of the higher ends, but I'm just throwing out a number. And then player A realizes that it's like, well, I'm only getting $100K from this school, and it's like, and then they go to their collective, and it's like, hey, I heard from this guy, I heard from this player that he's making this much. Why aren't you paying me this much? I'm just as good as he is. It's definitely a problem. And you mentioned how it affects team locker rooms. I mean, these guys hear from each other about how much they're making, and so it's a very complicated issue that every program has to navigate right now. But yeah, I'd love to. The thing with these NIL deals is they're all confidential and held under wraps. They're not publicized, so I'd love to get like a study, but you're never going to get verified numbers unless you make all of that public. So that's one of the hard things. You can only go off of hearsay, and unless you're privy to those negotiations and you're part of those dealings, because or you're the player themselves. Other than that, you can't really know. So that always makes it difficult.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not a good thing for your locker room. That's for sure. I mean, It's human nature. I mean, you got a guy that's making, whatever, $1 million, $2 million, or $100,000, and some guy that's making nothing. Like, inevitably, that creates some level of dissension in your locker room. So, I mean, regardless of how well I think the staff handles it or doesn't handle it, it's not good for the locker room. But in today's world and in college football as we currently live in it, it's inevitable. So it's just something that staffs have to get creative with dealing with. And, you just got to hope that your locker room's made of the right stuff. You got the right player leadership in there, because I think that's really where it starts. Like, or that's really where this stuff's you kind of head some of this stuff off, is with your player leadership. And if you don't have good player leadership, this kind of stuff is going to infect a locker room like a cancer. It can't just be the coaches. So, but again, that comes with the culture that you build, the type of players you recruit, all that sort of stuff. So it's look, man, it's a difficult world of college football, man. Not only do you got to recruit kids, you got to recruit your own roster year in and year out. You got to figure out NIL deals. You got to keep everybody happy. You got to try to keep depth on your roster, which is harder than it's ever been with the addition of NIL and the transfer portal. It's tough, man. It's a tough world in college football. These coaches certainly don't have it easy. They're well compensated, but their job is far from easy.
Right. Absolutely. John Sharon says tampering is essentially illegal and promoted regardless of what the NCAA says. Yeah, I mean that's the reality, and that's part of how these programs kind of get around. We were talking about interplayer communication. That's how players in these schools kind of get around some of the tampering and stuff like that. It's
as long as it's not a school official or somebody directly working for the program, like, all bets are off.
There's a lot of gray area.
Boosters can call whoever they want to call. Players can call whoever they want to call. All that stuff can happen. And this is the problem. Like, the NCAA is a teethless organization at this point. every time they try to do something, they get slapped with an antitrust lawsuit. And this is what I was talking about earlier with we need to hurry up and get to the destination where college football is going. We need some sort of governing body that has the ability to make and enforce some rules, because right now we live in a world of college football where it's just, there kind of are really no rules. Like the NCAA has all these arbitrary rules, but they can't enforce any of them. As soon as they do, it's just going to be another lawsuit, and the courts are going to be like, "Oh yeah, you can't do that. That's illegal." So at this point, there's stuff that's quote unquote illegal, but is it really illegal? No, because nothing can be enforced right now. And I think the sooner we get to a place in college football where we figure all this stuff out and there's some sort of governing body, whatever that governing body looks like, won't be the NCAA. It'll be something else. The better, because there's got to be some structure. The no structure thing is not good for anybody, really. So,
absolutely. CC Dog with a question. He says, "Sup, fellas? What coordinator will y'all want fired after week 1? It's never Dabo's fault." SEC Dog. I will not be. Yeah. I will not be calling for any coordinator's job.
No coordinator. Nope.
After week 1,
regardless of the result, I will not call for a coordinator's job. But that's not really our style anyway. But
we don't really promote firing on here. Like we'll let you know if we feel like changes need to be made, but we're not going to directly call for specific coaches' jobs on here. Like I don't like doing that. Like that, we can have those conversations. Everybody has those conversations behind closed doors. And
I get what he's getting at. He's saying George is about to beat us so bad we're gonna have to fire somebody. It's got to be somebody's fault.
Hey, if that happens. Hey, but and I think to our credit, we have definitely criticized Dabo when we felt it was necessary, and ultimately Dabo is responsible. Especially for the coordinator hires and the staff and the lack of the lack of transfer portal usage and all the stuff that we've talked about over the years of kind of why the results on the field have declined. I mean, I don't think anybody has ever said it's Dabo's fault, but I think because we're not saying Dabo should be fired, that means we don't think that he's responsible for anything. Like I think those are two different conversations. Like, no, Dabo's job is not in question, and I don't want a different coach to run this program. So, by that alone, we're not ever going to we're just not ever going to put that kind of thing out there. But we have been pretty critical of Dabo when necessary.
Right.
I'd like to think so. Maybe.
I think we're fair with it. Like, obviously, we're not going to go out and completely kill the guy. But I think we make it known where, we kind of differ from his philosophies or his point of views or, how he goes about things. But, I don't foresee Dabo ever being fired at Clemson. But, I do think he's made a lot of mistakes at Clemson. Some of the hires that he made have obviously affected Clemson on the field. It's affected us from a developmental standpoint. I think we hired some coaches that maybe weren't ready for the positions that they were given. And to his credit, he realized it. And he's making the changes necessary, right? Brings on Chris Rump, brings on Matt Luke. A year ago, brings on Garrett Riley. So I think he sees it, right? He may never come out in the media and say, I agree, I made the wrong hire. He's never going to come out and say that. But actions speak louder than words, right? Did he get rid of those individuals? Yes, he did. Because they weren't cutting it. They weren't going to perform to the level that Clemson needs to. So there is some you got to be happy with that at least. And we'll see. Maybe there's more changes that need to be made. I think this season is kind of we'll see. We kind of talked about it early on in spring, Jordan. Like, this is a season where we need to see the trajectory of Clemson change, right? Because we have been on a downward trajectory for 3 seasons now.
Yep.
We have progressively gotten worse each season. Although stat lines, you can say, oh, areas have gotten better, so on and so forth, right? But as a program, for the last 3 seasons, Clemson has gone down. So we need to see in 2024, the main thing I think for Clemson is you need to see that trajectory change back the opposite way. And I think as long as you see that, it is a successful season. We may not go on and, compete for a win a national title or nothing like that. I'm not saying we will, but we got to see that trajectory change, right? And I think that starts with what you're talking about, a 10-win season, getting back to a 10-win season, getting back to the ACC championship game, hopefully competing and winning that, and then we'll see where the rest of the cards fall, right? That would be, hey, Clemson's trending back in the right direction. The right coaching hires have been made. The program's starting to turn back, right? So I think that's what's important. That wasn't what SEC Dog was talking about. That was just a little trash talk, talking about how bad Clemson's going to get beat in week 1. But we'll see. We'll see, SEC Dog. We'll be right here, okay? You show up for that episode before and after, okay? Regardless, because we'll be here. So
absolutely,
we can't wait, man. He'll definitely be here. He always shows up. So if we get killed by him, he'd be on here just killing us in the chat. So.
Yeah. Wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, no, it'll be good. It'll be fun.
All right. Jay with another question. He says, do you think the fact that none of the wide receivers hit the portal, this window, I guess technically Bo Collins after the season did, but this spring portal window, do you think that the fact that none of the wide receivers hit the portal says anything about their opinion of Cade and the offensive line? I think that's a good question. It's interesting because, we had talked about it, when we were, discussing and kind of gearing up for the transfer portal window. We were like, I know I said I wouldn't be surprised if a wide receiver or 2 hit the portal. And it just didn't. I think there were probably opportunities for a few of those guys to jump in, but they didn't. I think some of that could be, maybe you sweeten the pot NIL wise. But again, we talked about the culture and kind of the belief. I think this wide receiver, is just a group of guys that love being at Clemson. I don't want to take any big picture things from the offense, but I do think there is a belief there. And even if it's not directly tied to Cade or the offensive line, I think it's a belief in Clemson and what they signed up to be a part of. The fact that, a guy like Troy Stellato hasn't entered the transfer portal is pretty remarkable. And there were some rumors swirling around during this window about that being a possibility, and it just didn't happen. So, I think, that speaks a ton about kind of just, again, the culture and, potentially they feel, I know they internally, they believe that this offense has what it takes. So, obviously we'll have to see. And, they were internally excited about the offense last year too. And it was a mixed bag to say the least. So
for sure.
I don't want to say that it's a fully just we think that, Cade is the guy and the offensive line is going to be great, but I think it's also just a belief in what the program they're a part of and what they signed up for. And I think you got to give credit to Tyler Grisham as well as a position coach. He ultimately, it's his job to manage that room, and he has a pulse on those guys better than anybody else in that room. And I think he's done a good job managing them and convincing guys to stay. Along with Dabo and the rest of the staff. So, I think it's awesome because I was very, it was always the thing lingering in the back of my mind. Like, are we going to lose somebody that's not going to play a bunch, or are we about to lose a a guy we are expecting to be a big contributor because
right.
I mentioned Troy Stellato because that he was a guy that was thrown out there in the transfer portal rumor mill, and he's a guy I think is poised to have a really nice season. It would have sucked to see him go after he worked so hard to come back, and he's still here, so that's cool, and I'm very happy about that because I think this wide receiver room is in a really good place right now.
Oh yeah, for sure. They're definitely in a good place, and I wouldn't say I'm surprised that nobody left, but it also wouldn't have surprised me to see a wide receiver or two leave. I mean, it is a pretty deep room. There's a lot of guys there, so it's certainly an accomplishment to be able to retain all these guys through a 30-day transfer portal window. So, I mean, that hats off to Grish, hats off to Dabo, Garrett Riley, the rest of the offensive staff for keeping those guys around. And I think it's a reason to be maybe cautiously optimistic about the future of this offense. Again, we're all, anything that we say positively about this offense is all a projection to what they could be. We haven't seen it yet on the field. We didn't see it in the spring game. We're not going to see it in fall camp because we're not privy to any of those practices. All we're going to hear is what the coaches are saying, and they said a lot of good things last year, and it didn't work out. So it is kind of a, believe it when you see it type of deal with a lot of Clemson fans at this point, which you have to understand because not that we've been duped, but, we've had some high praises come from the offensive side of the ball in recent years, and it hasn't panned out on the field. So, but, cautious optimism, I think, is the best that we can muster up right now as Clemson fans when we're talking about this offense.
Absolutely. Ran out of starred questions, so now we are scrolling through. James Bond is in the chat now. That's an honor.
James Bond. Dang. That's I didn't know cool. We had that kind of pull, man. We got James Bond up in here.
We're doing numbers, man.
Which James Bond do you think it is?
That's a good question.
Is it Daniel Craig or is it
I'm gonna go with Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig? Yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah. He's a pretty good James Bond.
Yeah. We're just messing with you, James. He asked, do we have a deep threat wide receiver yet? If not, then the offense is in trouble. I mean, I would be very shocked if we.
I think we got a couple of them.
Out of that room, we didn't have anybody. And there's several guys in that room that have shown they can be deep threats. I mean, again, and I've harped on it a bunch, but it wasn't like last season. The lack of explosive plays wasn't because we weren't trying. We weren't scheming them up. Guys were getting open. Even Bo Collins was getting open deep. Adam Randall got open deep a lot of times. Tyler Brown when he was healthy. Antonio Williams, obviously we didn't see a ton, but he's a guy that has shown he can get open down the field with his route running ability. You still have Cole Turner coming back. We still have. I want to see kind of, whether he's kind of developed his bag and being a more, versatile weapon. But he has the speed. He has the long speed to get open downfield. I think Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore will definitely have the ability to do. Again, there are a lot of guys in this room that I think are, can be options for you down the field. So, and that's not even including your tight end room. I think Jake Brenningstool is a great option down the field. So if Clemson doesn't scheme up, if Clemson doesn't have an explosive passing offense, I don't think it's because the wide receivers can't get open down the field. I don't think that's.
Well, I think
that was the problem last year.
You've mentioned it several times. There were open wide receivers down the field.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't make the plays. Cade didn't make the reads. He, for whatever reason, didn't pull the trigger. Whatever, on any given play, whatever it was, it just didn't happen. I think we only had. I saw a stat line where we only had 30 plays of 20 yards or more, only 12 passing plays of 30 yards or more last season. So, I mean, that's way down in the hundreds when it comes to offensive production, when it comes to explosive plays. So definitely a huge need of improvement in that department for the Clemson team. But like you mentioned, the talent's there. You know, Cole Turner, Troy Stellato. You know, there's guys there that can that have that speed, that can be that deep threat. So gotta have the growth though. The growth from the most important position on the field, which is quarterback. There's got to be growth.
Yep. And we still don't really know.
Yep. That's at
the end of the day.
Wait and see.
All right. Let's see. We'll do probably one more. We're about to hit that 2-hour mark.
Oh yeah, we're right up against it.
Yep. John Sarian asks, Clemson recruiting stays solid from Virginia down to Florida, recently picked up in Texas. You think Luke is going to open up Mississippi, spending time there, getting attention? I mean, I think it's definitely, a really good opportunity. Matt Luke obviously spent time in the state of Mississippi, as the head coach of Ole Miss. He recruited there a ton when he was at Georgia. They have consistently put out really good players on the line of scrimmage. I think that it's kind of been an untapped market for Clemson. I can't think of a whole lot of, especially offensive linemen. I really can't think of anybody off the top of my head that they really went and got. I'm sure I'm missing. There's some, but it hasn't been a primary recruiting area for Clemson, and I think the rest of the college football world, especially the SEC, they know all about the state of Mississippi and the quality you can get down there. But it's just something Clemson hasn't really delved into a ton. But yeah, I mean, Matt Luke has a lot of ties to the high schools in that area. And he has a proven track record of production there. So yeah, I mean, he's been making the rounds I've seen on Twitter. I think that is definitely something to keep an eye on down the road. And not just for 2025, but for future cycles as well.
When you hire a guy like Matt Luke, I mean, that's one of the big reasons you hire him, is he does open up new doors in recruiting. And then his pedigree of all the offensive lines that he's produced in college, all the guys that he's put into the NFL. Like, that's why you hire a guy like that, so that you can open up new doors in recruiting and hopefully start recruiting a different level of offensive linemen, because, that's always been kind of a weak point at Clemson. We've always had, when we were having our big run, like, we had adequate offensive lines. We've never really had any great offensive lines, right? That's never really been Clemson.
There's never been a season where I'm like, oh yeah, man, we've got a dominant offensive line. And like the 2018 line ended up pretty good, but I think a lot of people forget they were really shaky to start the year. Like, people were like, they looked kind of in some of those games. A&M game, they got physically whooped at times.
Right. And that seems to be the case with like these Clemson offensive lines, and like that's why I was so excited when Matt Luke came aboard and Dabo hired him. Is like, that dude's different. Like, and he's got the track record to put out there and kind of hush the silence the haters on, the recruiting trail, because, hey, Clemson ain't done it before, but guess what? I'm here at Clemson now. I've done this at every stop I've gone to. So it won't be any different here, right? And that gives Clemson the ability to maybe bring in those top-tier offensive linemen that are looking to have a future in the NFL, because there's no reason Clemson shouldn't have really good to great offensive line play. There's no reason we can't build a consistent offensive line year in and year out. It just it never made any sense to me. And, I'm hoping Matt Luke will be around for an extended period of time, and we can finally start building that pedigree at Clemson when it comes to offensive line.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll do one more and then get on out of here. I did want to address this one because I think I just kind of I'm gonna have to disagree with Els King here. Love you, man. Valuable part of the audience, but he says I think Cole Turner and Troy Stellato probably wouldn't see the field much at any Power 5 school. I just can't get with that. I know Cole Turner was sort of he was a lower rated guy, but he was a guy that hasn't played the receiver position as long as some guys, but I can't get with that. And Troy Stellato especially, no. I mean, do you remember his recruitment? Do you know who Clemson beat out?
Ohio State to get that dude.
Yeah, do you know who? Like, do you know the schools that Clemson beat out to land Troy Stellato? Like, go back and watch his high school tape. Go watch his camp tape. Troy Stellato was coveted by a very large group of number of Power 5 programs. I mean, he was a top 150 kid. He was one of the better wide receivers in his class. Like, no, I can't get behind that. He's a guy that came in and couldn't stay healthy. Like, if there's a knock on him, it was his availability.
He stays hurt.
To say that he wouldn't play anywhere, I just any other Power 5, that's not true. And the fact that even after the injuries he's had, there were Power 5 schools that were reaching out and trying to get him to transfer. I think that kind of quells that notion. And I think we saw enough from him last year. You know, when he was, I mean, I think he's got extremely reliable hands. I mean, he's a very good route runner, and he was a safety outlet for Cade in several games, especially in that bowl game. Like, I can't say that. No, especially Troy Stellato. Like, he was a highly coveted recruit. If Troy Stellato was a missed evaluation, which I don't think we can say that he was. And I think he showed us enough last year to think that he could have a nice year this year. Then every other Power 5 school missed on him as well, including Ohio State, whose track record at the receiver position speaks for itself. Like, and it wasn't like, Ohio State didn't want him. No, it was a battle between Clemson and Ohio State for him at the very end. And Clemson won that recruiting battle. So no, I can't get with that. You know, Cole Turner, I understand the skepticism. He hasn't played a ton. I have my questions as well. He's shown. I mean, he can run. Like, I mean, I don't doubt his speed, but
he's got to stay healthy.
He's got to stay healthy, and he's got to be able to develop. Being a receiver is more than just being fast. And we haven't shown that he can be dynamic enough to be a significant contributor, other than a guy that you send out deep and if he can outrun a DB, like, that's great, but he's not really going to win with his technique or his understanding of the route tree or anything like that. That we have yet to see, and a lot of that is because he's missed so much time. So I understand the skepticism with Cole Turner more, but Troy Stellato, no, I can't get with that. I can't get with that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to complete the show for tonight. Thank everybody for showing up. We still got 21 people in the live chat right now. Let me give a quick shout out to the last several people that have left comments, just because you guys stuck it out with us for the past 2 hours, and I truly do appreciate you guys. We got Isaac Smith in here, G Bama Boy, Jay, David Wood, SEC Dog, John Sarian, David Wood, I think I already said his name. Let's see.
Name so nice you had to say it twice.
That's right. James Bond, Gutrich 10 in here. The Crib Kane. Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate you. Alex Gaming Channel. And I think that is it. Els King, thank you for stopping by. Appreciate your support. And I think that is everybody. Just wanted to shout out the people that have stuck out with us to the end, still commenting. Appreciate you guys so much. That wraps up another episode of the All In Show. As you guys know, we're here every Thursday, 8 p.m. to talk college football, Clemson football, and everything in between. Another good one in the books. We'll see you guys next Thursday, 8 p.m. Jordan, you want to send the people off?
Yeah, guys. Once again, great show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Everybody that's left, those of you guys that go back and rewatch the show, we appreciate you guys as well. Always enjoy coming on here, and we still somehow managed to hit the 2-hour mark. I mean, we really got deep into the listener questions this go around, but hey, we had the time, the extra time, right. So we wanted to give that to y'all. So yeah, I will actually, and that's something I needed to, I should have mentioned to you before, but I will actually not be available for the show next week. So we will have we will probably put out a community post on kind of what, the plan is. We haven't ironed that out yet. So stay tuned and listen or put your notifications on or whatever, or check the community page sometime during the week. And to kind of figure out what the plan is for a show is. So, but other than that, thank you guys, and we'll see you next show.
Yeah, absolutely. Until next time, guys, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. Go Tigers.
Later, y'all.